Hey, welcome to another edition of JTJU, where we all try to be just a little better at the game of Clash of Clans. I've got another Clan War Tactics video for you, this time looking at TH8 Hog, specifically the evolution of gameplay there, starting with the V deploy for entry-level hoggers, and then moving into surgical, which is more similar to the actual techniques you'll be using at Town Hall 9, both for hogging and Lavalunian, so it makes sense to try to change it up a little bit as you're in Town Hall, even though the V deploy might be working for you. That said, here's how the V deploy looks in terms of mix. You got the CC21 for the kill of the CC, and you can use poison after the trigger to actually weaken it up a little bit, keep it simple for yourselves, and then use wizards supporting that to kill it off. And then you'd have 33 hogs off of heal with some cleanup troops of barbs and archers to finish the attack. Now surgical, on the other hand, is very similar in some ways. It uses the same CC21 but no poison. We try to keep that for the skelly scrub as the hogs run around in the base, and in addition we just use a few less wizards to kill it off, so a little bit cleaner of a CC kill. And then you'll notice there's a couple giants there that actually help defend the hogs as they move into the base after the surgical deployment, you can see, plus you'll see the V deploy as well, to then move through and be cleaned up with wizards. So that said, let's take a look at the attacks and see how it works out. But before we do, let's give a high five out to our backup band Missing Persons from 1982, and probably a double high five out to my wife, who keeps reminding me of all these great songs from our youth. Alright guys, let's take a look. Okay, so here's our V deploy example. The base, first off, in terms of style, fits the profile because it's the max base. It's got a nice soft center, meaning the DPS defenses are on the outside, and also there's no buried double bomb positions, double giant bomb positions that you can't really defuse, so we'll give this a green. Alright, next up is the trigger and poison step of the attack, and usually that's done with a hog. She tried to pull it off with an archer, and then she gets it out and she drops in another hog here, which really isn't needed. You know, she didn't see the wizard underneath the dragon wing, I assume, but default is small units come out first, then the bigger units, so she should have just known by default once the dragon pops you're done. So we'll give her a yellow there and move up to the next step. Next up is the attack vector. You got to choose which way you're going to attack from, and usually that's based with the V deploy on where the king is. You attack directly opposite so that he ends up hitting your hogs less. The hogs will come to him last and finish the base and have a less time before they start attacking him. So that's good. Her positioning is right. The CC kill's a little sloppy. Notice how she had to use her Barb King to get the dragon off the witches. That is the most important thing. So if you have to sacrifice your Barb King, definitely do so. But ideally you spin up the witches just a little earlier, dropping the CC a little earlier so they can spin up their skellies, and then once the skellies are spinning, the dragon will stay away from the witches for the most part, and the wizards flanking can take it out. So I'll give her yellow on this one. Next step is the V deploy, and this is what Katie does so well. You'll notice when I resume this back, see the first hog is dropped at 38 seconds. She drops the other 31 in 2 seconds. And then with using her two fingers, drawing from 12 to 3 and 12 to 9, both at the same time, one swipe, boom, out. And that is actually what makes her attack so successful, because she can get so much damage on the field in so short a time. And in addition, because it's such a nice linear draw, she basically replicates in a way the pathing that a surgical kind of does, where because it's evenly deployed from 12 to 3 and 12 to 9, she actually creates distinct hog groups on each defense in those two fronts. So definitely a green here. So that leaves the heals. You can see the first one going down there at 230, and that's usually how it flows with the V deploy. There'll be two heals, one for each of the flanks, right about, you know, second channel in for them. You can see there are two there now. And then the third heal is held back a little bit, waiting for where the hogs are going to take their most damage, also kind of hovering over where there might be bomb positions to cover them for that too. So definitely green here. And last but not least, you're doing your cleanup. Save a few of your slots, barbarians, archers, maybe 5 slots or 8 if you want to do 2 wizards, to clean up where the hog farthest away from the hogs are. So in this case, 3 o'clock. See that barbarian hacking away at the army camp, something similar to that. But otherwise, the attack looks pretty clean. Great example of the V deploy and how it can be used to enable hoggers at the start of Town Hall 8 action to be very successful. I think Katie ends up having around a 60 to 70% 3-star rate with this on first attack on any Town Hall 8 base. Okay, so now that we've got the V deploy kind of laid down, and we'll only do one review of that, let's switch over to surgical. The questions are very similar, just a few tweaks. The first one, the style, is exactly the same. You're looking for max Town Hall 8 type bases, no buried giant bomb or double giant bomb positions. You want the DPS on the outside, kind of a soft center, so you can basically path your hogs into it. This is definitely green. This fits the profile. So the next up is the trigger, and it's just like the V deploy. We use 1 or 2 hogs depending on the CC flows out. But what is different is we don't use a poison. We want to increase the degree of difficulty for our CC kill, not use the poison as a crutch. Save that for clearing skellies when the hogs are moving through the base. So you can basically, we're going to do the T-Duck kill with just the CC-21 and some distract barbs and some wizards, and we're going to get it done. So this is a green. Attack vector is just like the V deploy. We're going to try to avoid the king side and attack from the opposite. That does that here. Good to go, green. Next up, we do the CC kill with an archer drag, followed by the CC witches, then the wizards on the flanks, and then barbs used sparingly to redirect if the skellies get wiped. Nicely done, green. Okay, next up is the actual deployment step of the surgical, and that really breaks down into a couple key concepts. One, the first units you deploy are going to be shielded by 2 giants, 1 on each side of the T-Duck team. And then your surgical groups are usually 3 to 4 hogs apiece. In this case, A-Boy will end up deploying 9 total groups. And you'll notice that there are 2 distinct phases of groups being deployed. It's an initial group of, I think, 2 or 3 groups on each side of the T-Duck team. Then he's got about 2 to 4 groups that come in at the tail end as he waits for those first groups to kind of move into the mid of the base. And then he gets distract from those groups as his other hogs come in. But the big thing is distinct hogs being deployed against distinct point defenses on the outside, and so that they path in. And then as a wrinkle, you would then also be thinking about how those groups might path in and break, depending on how you time them, the giant bomb positions that you're afraid of. But green here overall. So heal and poison wise, it is different than the V in terms of you're going to be reading the defense a lot more and reading which hog teams are surviving, which ones are dying, and casting spells based on that. And then you're casting your poison, now that you have it, you're going to cast it ahead of the hog team, anticipating their pathing once the skellies on the ground are all been kind of triggered and are chasing. So those are the 2 big things off of the heals, and he did a pretty good job here. It's a green. Last but not least, we need to do our cleanup and read where the hogs are and where they're not, and deploy the wizards to help out. And in this case, it's going to be down there at 7:30. Looks good. The overall team should just flow to victory. So that's the first slow walkthrough of the surgical. I'm going to go through 2 more in a more of a rapid fire speed, so you can kind of get the feel for the concepts of how to do these distinct deployments. But it's very similar, and this mix ends up giving RCO9 basically around a 90% success rate at Town Hall 8 on first attack, so pretty good. Okay, now that we got the flow down for surgical, let's take a look at a couple of replays where we just kind of don't pause it and we just look at it as it goes. We'll leave the notes up there so you can kind of refer to them, but I won't highlight them. So there's the trigger, two hogs as usual, and then pulling it out with first the archer, then see how early the CC was dropped there, and then once those skellies are spun up, how the dragon really struggles to ever turn around and hit the witches. So really the poison's not needed. The V deploys can get off of it at some point and then get a little bit more timing. Also notice the use of the giants at 5 and 7 that allowed the hogs to get all the way to mid base before they needed heal. I think that's an interesting aspect of the giant distract for the surgical. And when the surgical first came out, I thought that's what the giants represented, was the surgical aspect, but it became much more about discrete hog units per path than it was about the giants. And actually a lot of people stopped using the giants, but I still think if you can get two defenses or 3, for sure if it's 3, tied up off the entry, it's definitely worth swapping a hog for a giant and putting that giant out in front, because then the hogs go through clean. So good attack here, good sample. Okay, so let's take a look at the attack number 3 in the surgical set. Pretty max base. You see the trigger coming in there at 5 o'clock. 1 hog, as usual, dies, but the dragon is out, and now we have the archer drag to 6 o'clock. And then there you can kind of see the timing of when the CC came down. The dragon was almost crossing the outer wall, given the time for the skellies to spin up. Now the wizards are in flanking position around the skelly pack. And just notice how the dragon, again, never turns, really. So, nicely done. There's your discrete hog deploys, about 4. The giants in front at the 2 positions. So about 4 teams are down, I think, at this point. And notice the pause again. before the final set of hogs go in. 1, 2, and one more. So it's almost like there's a pause, and then he's actually going to do a third pause for a final hog set that I assume is going to come at 12 once he's got distract going on. Yep, so you see how the archer tower was distracted? That's the other thing about surgical is at Town Hall 8. A lot of times the hog packs are distracting for the follow-on hog pack. So you're watching for the hogs that you already have in the field to tie up perimeter defenses that you're going to target with the next hog pack. And once they get tied up, locked on, you basically, that's your giant distract, but it's a hog, and you operate off that. So another good example of timing. He's got, what does he have there? Almost 10 hogs and the witches and everything else still there. Let's take a look at another. Alright, example number 4 is going to be a spread Town Hall 8 base, which is interesting relative to a couple things. Both, it's a good example of how the CC kill is still the same, even though it's scrunched up against the side. You drag with the archer, you wait till the dragon gets in about that range, drops the CC so they can spin up, and then after that, even though he loses a couple whiz on one side there, he's got enough distraction going to take care of the rest. Then the giants are really critical in this because they need to walk to cover that distance. The hogs run a long way before getting to stuff they want to mess with. And then finally, you know, with this spread base, it could have been a little bit better set up in terms of hog giant bomb pathing. You don't really see any double giant bomb positions anywhere. But the surgical's built to minimize that risk by keeping teams separate. You know, not only are you having those 2 phases of team deployment, so there's a late stage team as well, but the teams are split up. You know, in one case we had 9 teams on the ground going out at any given time. So those things together really make Town Hall 8 versus surgical something that's in the attacker's favor. So guys, I hope that helped you, the different flavors there, and if I were you, I would start to practice surgical at Town Hall 8 and get it down pat before you go to Town Hall 9. Because the skills you use there are the same you use at Town Hall 9, both for Hog and for Lavalunian or Lavaloon. So it should help you out a lot to get it down right before you go. Good luck out there. Talk to you soon.
What am I gonna do? My clan sucks. Hey, it's JTJ.
I think that's an all-out attack.
No, it's the legendary JTJU. 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 What? I like my horn. You and this army. Download Clash of Clans for free. Then subscribe to JTJU and win.